there, this is Malorian, and this will be the next video in my whole Warmachine 101 series for basically new players getting into the game. And at this point here, we've gone over the main rules, started getting into the factions, stuff like this. Hopefully now, if you're a new player, you've played a game or two. And now I think this is the time, before I start getting into power attacks and all the little fancy nuances of the game, is really talking about the early setbacks. And this is something I see with a lot of new players. So a lot of players get into Warmachine, they love it, they think it's awesome, and then they hit a bump. They hit something, some rocky road, and some of them don't recover. Some say, it's not for me, and they go away. And, you know, in some cases, sure, maybe Warmachine isn't your game, but there's other cases here, too, where I think if people just kind of understood it a little bit more, they would not then go away. They're like, oh, okay, that's how it works. So we're going to go through those main ones right now. Now, the first one that comes up is that you're excited, you got your new faction all put together, you got this caster that's cool, you got these jacks, and you play, and you run up your guys, and you're ready to kick butt, and they kill your caster. It's just game over. You're just like, what's going on? And you start to realize that your guy there, your little caster or warlock who's covered in armor and looks all badass, he can die. And he actually can die fairly easily. Even if you go with the guys with the high armor, they're not invincible, and stuff can still take them down if you're not careful. And so what you'll have is some new players that play their first couple of games, they get their caster killed, they're like, this is bull. I'm to hell with this game. This is retarded. And they go away from it. And there's really two different parts to this for the reason why they're dying. The first one is just because they're not playing defensively. They're running up their models, their caster is right in the middle of nowhere, and they're not respecting how shots can be taken their way, right? Either they assume that the opponent is going to be attacking their jacks first or something like this, and also it's like, oh, what, you targeted my warcaster? Oh, damn. Or again, they think that their warcaster is just that so invincible that, oh, go ahead, shoot me, Ravagors, that's no problem. Sure, I'll lose a little bit of health, but I'll be fine. And then all of a sudden you're dead, right? So that's part of it there. And really, the answer to that part is actually just to start playing more defensively. Your caster, in a lot of cases, does not need to be far up there. You have a lot of game that you can play out before you dedicate your caster, or even a little more at the time, your caster does not need to be up front. Your caster has a long control range, so stay at that full reach out from where you need to be and do what you need from the very back. And at the same time, be looking for safer places to put your caster. If somewhere on your half of the board, you got some elevation, you got some cover, you got whatever, use that to your advantage. If not, use your own army to start blocking line of sight. If you know they're going to try and shoot you, well, set yourself up so that you're either behind your jacks or the troops in front are not completely all spaced out, that when needed be, you have a line that's actually going to be blocking line of sight to take some pressure off your caster. But for the most part, even that, people can peel away, right? If you make a couple of layers of guys, just takes a couple of shots, you open up a hole, and then boom, that's where the big guns fire and they get your caster. So that's where you have to learn. You have to have them back, right? Distance, using it to your advantage, staying far back so that they can't even shoot you, or if they can, making sure they're in cover or something else. For the horde side, making sure as well that I'm going to start camping a little bit. It's really good to be pushing your beast to get a lot of work done, but you probably want to be saving 1 or 2 fury for transferring just in case they go for your caster and figure something out. Now, I said there's 2 parts to this. The other part is also just that lack of knowledge where, you go up there and it's like, oh yeah, Epic Kane, he has 2 guns. I can survive 2 shots. And then he pops feet. He shoots you 10 times and you're dead, right? So there is also that little bit of knowledge gap or maybe Butcher 3, right? Where he comes across the board and kills you. And you're like, this is bull. But it's in learning that and then taking the time to think about how you're going to counter it, right? How does Butcher 3 actually operate? How does Kane 2 actually operate? What are the actual odds they're playing with, and how can I put in my favor so that, yes, you could go for my caster, but all of a sudden you're looking at like a 30% success rate, and now, okay, I can take those odds. You can go for it, but if you fail, you're pretty much dead. So you can always play that game too. So that's really that first part. And if you get that, you know what happened to me? When I was new to it, I was throwing up my caster all the time, getting killed, and I actually had to go through a self-campaign where I had to stop myself from being killed on turn 2, because I would just push my caster up, and the way I stopped it is just by understanding, taking time to think about what they could actually threaten my caster with, and then using distance, using terrain, and then also blocking a line of sight where possible. Now, the next one that can really get you is then the scenario. You know, if you're being cautious and you're staying back, you're trying to be very careful, and then all of a sudden they ding off a couple of control points, and now you can't stop them, right? Because after you get some of those first ones, all they need to do is start cleaning out a zone once that they can dominate, and the game can be over like that if you're not very careful. And that really just comes down to scenario awareness. I mean, at the time, it can seem like bullshit. Because like, oh, man, I mean, come on. My guy was standing right there. He's just barely out. So what? Now you get a point on my turn and your turn, and you dominate over here? This is stupid. But really, all you have to do is, and this is even easier, right? Because it's not like there's tons of different, let's say 100 different scenarios. There's only a handful of scenarios, and they're all based off the same sort of idea. And really, if you're just doing your part and making sure, okay, this is turn 1, I don't need to be worrying about scenario. Okay, turn 2, I need to start thinking about, you know, how I'm going to be contesting these zones or scoring on these zones. Or, okay, I can give up maybe 1 point here, but how is this going to affect me the long game? How can I make sure they get a couple of points here? I can stop them later. And it's really not so much, I noticed, the long-term planning as far as that scoring goes. It's more just the simplistic thing of just, I forgot to contest the zone, right? I was so focused with keeping my caster safe and setting up my lines here in the middle, I just didn't put anyone in the zone over there. And then all of a sudden, bam, they score some points even on my turn, and it basically ends like that. So, and then with that too, kill box can be another one, right? Your caster is staying way back, you're playing safe, you're like, all right, that's it. I'm not going to get myself killed. And all of a sudden they remind you at the end of your turn too, by the way, you just you just kill boxed yourself. And you just gave me 2 control points. And suddenly that just swings the game is over. And again, it's just that scenario awareness and knowing at the start, okay, is this a kill box mission? All right. Is this my turn 2? Okay, this is where I have to start looking contesting, and how far am I from that back edge, right? You can measure that, see how close you are, and then making sure that you're going to be safe. So that's another big one. Now, the next one here, is kind of situational because not all new players start with this, but it's really the death clock. Like I said, new players really should be using the death clock. However, it can really throw them off, right? When you have somebody that loses the first time off a death clock, they think it's the dumbest thing ever. They're like, oh, wow, this is stupid, right? I still had all these guys. I was just taking my time to make sure I did things right. How should I be losing just because of time? This is a stupid mechanic. Or if it's time turns, right? Like, oh, what? The turn's over already? I didn't activate this. This would change the game so much. And right there, that can throw the people off, and they just leave the game. But again, you have to bring them back, and you got to say, it's a lot of time, you know, for a 50-point game. You get an hour. Just make sure to be maximizing your time efficiency, and, you know, don't spend all that time trying to analyze every little detail. You know, have that game plan, go in there, do what you need to do, and just play to that clock. And even though they might lose the first couple times the death clock, you know, the way that might be able to answer that is just say, you know what, let's play this game with the clock, but we won't use it as a win condition, right? That's a great way to go after this. Because then all of a sudden they can start practicing that time, how fast they have to go, but they're not going to get angry at the end because they won't technically lose when the clock goes off. The next one here is going to be the look. And this one is kind of silly, where they start saying, you know what, this stuff looks stupid. It's not, I just don't like the way this looks. It's ridiculous. The shoulder pads are so big and blah blah blah. Steampunk, whatever is the thing that irks them. But then they don't really realize the scope of the models, right? Let's say you're playing Menoth, and you start saying like, wow, look at Vlad's big shoulder pads and on the Cinerators and on the Judicator or whatever, right? Like this is ridiculous. Well, there's actually a lot of models in Menoth that don't have any shoulder pads at all, right? You could be going with Idrians and Zealots and do this whole other type of list, right? You don't have to go with the guys that have the big shoulder pads. So it really depends on which faction you're talking about. Maybe you just don't like werewolves, right? You went and you bought the Circle starter box. You're like, you know what? Werewolves are dumb. These two-headed dogs are dumb. Circle's stupid. I'm out of here. And they don't realize, whoa, wait a second. Do you realize they have all these golems here, all these constructs? Maybe you should be looking at these guys. Same faction. You're not totally having to change gears. You're just getting same things from the same faction that look very different and all of a sudden could be not irking you in the way that the other one did irk you. So there you go. These are these early setbacks, and I thought this was going to be a good timing for it, depending where you are, as a new gamer. So hopefully you found this helpful, and we'll catch you later. Bye.